would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Oh, I've been gone for a little while, but I am back, and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to start this broadcast out at. And really, what I've been hearing about is Bitcoin for quite a while lately. And there's pretty good reason for it, for the high spike that it's hit. In the past month, right around the high's been around like 19,000. Low's been around 9,000. So you literally got about 10,500, difference there. And people are like, is this a bubble? Is this, is this going to last? Well, in the day, it's down right now, around 380. It's sitting around 1529, depending on what market you look at. You have, Bitstamp, you got BitPay, Gemini, different, indexes for it, but they're all somewhere, Gemini somewhere around 15,340 or something like that, I think was the last I seen. Bitstamp was, I think, 1530, but then you had other ones. I'm trying to remember exactly what I was seeing. I think it was like Coinbase, I think, had 1534. Other ones were sitting about 15,410. I've seen a little bit, but right now, again, it's down between $300-400 basically. And I urge people to always make sure you have some type. If you're into Bitcoin, if you're going along with Bitcoin, trying to play the market, or if you're just using it for backup. Either way, I really urge you to get an app that gives you multiple sources, because if you only have one source and that source is showing it at a lower level, but you want to sell some, you might sell it lower than what you could actually get out of it. Vice versa, if you go buy it and you see a, market that's at the high end of it, you might be paying a little bit too much for that Bitcoin. So I urge people, I have Bitcoin Ticker. That's an iOS app. So that's one I prefer. It also, it'll show you the exchange rate in euros or the Canadian or, Japanese currency. And then they have what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, 13 different indexes you can check. Bittrex. I know a lot of people use that. It's at the high end. Might be good to sell using, that as the price market, but you wouldn't want to buy using that as your price point. I think, yeah, it's got CoinDesk. And if we go back to Bittrex, it's at 15,391. And if we go to Coinbase, it's at 15,365, and CoinDesk puts at 15,348.3. So you can kind of see they're all around somewhat the same, but I know people that actually trade currencies, and it's real vital to have these type of apps, and it just helps you make a better investment if you're using it. But right now the markets are down. They're slowly going up, but that's for today. If we look at a week right now, where it's sitting at the week, it's down $881. So in the week, yeah, you probably didn't make too much money. But if you look at a 1 month period right now, in 1 month, you're still at a positive of 5,889.6 according to CoinDesk. A 3 month period, you're talking about 11,594.9. And I've heard people come out and say, it's a bubble, it's going to burst, and it's going to, crash Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be over. Then I have people say, it's going to shoot for the sky. Really, it can go either way. And a lot of it comes from the playing of the market and being just like anything else. It can crash. There is a bubble. That there's no doubt about it. There is a bubble. How big is this bubble compared to what it should maybe as Bitcoin be at? We're not sure. But the bubble is a little bit of free market creation. People think, a free market bubbles can't be created. Well, if you have a whole bunch of people rushing to it, you create a bubble. Everybody rushes to it. Everybody that rushes to it is not in it for the long haul. Everybody that rushes to it might be excited about it now, but they get bored with it later. And then some keep it, use it. And that's where that balance can, play out. The fear I have, if we go the route of it falling apart, it's going to be because it's going to drop off. People are going to start getting out of Bitcoin. And I think the only thing that could collapse it, really, I think would be these big companies that have started using Bitcoin deciding we're getting out of it too. So, like Overstock.com uses Bitcoin. They accept Bitcoin. If they decided to pull out, and a couple other big businesses decide to pull out, you could see Bitcoin crash. On the other hand, with the market and Bitcoin doing what it's done in the past, year, you could also see more companies say, we'll start taking Bitcoin. I'll take Bitcoin. You'll take Bitcoin. We'll all take Bitcoin. And when that bubble pops, it would have a smaller effect on Bitcoin as a whole. Doesn't mean that, people buying right now might not be disappointed. But I don't see a full collapse of it. So I think that's where, you could play multiple angles of that. We're going to go ahead and get into a Ron Paul Liberty report covering cryptocurrencies and, the Bitcoin. This one's gold, yuan, and crypto. Will it replace the dollar hegemony? So let's go ahead and dive into this.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. Today, the co-host is Christopher Rosini, and he's with us by Skype as usual. Well, anyway, welcome everybody to the program, and welcome Chris to our program today. Oh, very good. We're going to have a subject today which fascinates me because I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've been fascinated with the monetary issue. As long as I can remember, especially as a coin collector at a young age, but also interested in economics and interested in political system, interested in the Bretton Woods Agreement and the gold standard and all these things. But right now, I'm going to continue to talk about, because it's really getting in the news, and that's talking about dollar hegemony. And I believe we're losing it, but it's been a very important principle. It's been around a long time. And it's been a consequence of, what happened after World War II. We were very wealthy. We were spared the damaging effect of World War II, and we had all the gold, essentially. So we were able to command and control the monetary system, which was deeply flawed. And yet it gave us tremendous power and economic advantages and authority to print money at will and run up debt. And even back in 1945, Henry Hazlitt, a good Austrian economist, predicted that Bretton Woods wouldn't work, and sure enough it did. And that failed in 1971 with the breakdown of Bretton Woods. But dollar hegemony has been around. It has continued, even though it has not had true gold backing to it. It's been related to gold up until 1971. And there has been a back and forth on its value. The value has continued to go down, but it still has been the kingpin around the world. But we're now, Chris, starting to see, the threat to the currency. And I think that big things are going on because we're talking about what is going to substitute for the dollar. And that's what I would like to talk about today. But I'm sure you've thought a little bit about that, and I'd like to get your viewpoint.
Yes, unfortunately, our country, even well before I was even born, decided to go for the empire, and that's where we're at today. But the American empire is not just Americans. There are a lot of foreign accomplices and creditors and partners. There's a lot of people that have to play along, and they do play ball as long as it's in their interest to do so. They'll gladly take American taxpayer money as aid, and they'll allow us to defend their country and pay for it. I mean, who wouldn't take that? What a deal. So they'll do this once it's in their interest. But once an empire overextends, either financially or militarily, people start looking for the exit doors. And while no one wants to be the first out the door, once somebody does jump, it's like a mad rush. It's like dominoes, and we're starting to see that, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, and I think to make that point, all we have to do is look at what the UN did this past week, because they had a vote dealing with support or lack of support for the United States. And that had to do with the Jerusalem situation, because nobody's agreeing with Trump on where the capital should be and this sort of thing. So there's been a rebellion against it. But when the vote came up in the General Assembly of the United Nations, Nikki Haley threatened them and said, you know what? If you don't vote for us, we're going to take your name down. And if you don't do what we tell you, we're going to take your money away. Well, why do we give them the money in the first place is what I would say. But this intimidation. But the amazing thing is they didn't give a hoot. They figured, we don't have to bow to everything the United States tell us. And I think that's a sign. That's a sign of the weakening of the empire and the weakening of the dollar. You wouldn't know that by just looking at the dollar, on the markets right now, because the dollar is holding up against the other currencies. But the political attitude about the United States is we're losing credibility. Credibility is important. It is important that you have a powerful army and a powerful economy to defend a world reserve currency. But I think there are signs all around. I think the subsequent complications coming from the radical inflationism of the QEs, the QE4s that we went through since 2007, I think that is a big event. And I think the consequences are there. And a lot of people would say, why are you worried? The stock market's doing great. And I've always argued that people vote, from their bellies. And Trump is not doing well in the political polling. I think it's true. Well, why would that be the case? The economy is booming. Unemployment rates are low. So there's something fictitious about that. And I think that shows, strong evidence of the divisiveness in our country, where those dollars that have been printed are helping a certain group. The rich get richer. And even if they try to make equalizing this, we still have a dollar problem. And I think this week that we saw something interesting, because the Chinese have threatened. It's been going on for years. We're going to replace, the dollar. And of course, they're getting more serious. Matter of fact, as we speak, they're supposed to be issuing their first attempt to gain support for a yuan, backed by gold and traded in the markets, and buy oil with Chinese yuan. And no, it's not catastrophic. Might not happen real fast, but it's another sign. And their reaction is very simple. Why shouldn't we look for an alternative? Why shouldn't Russia help us? They put sanctions, on us, and we put, conditions. And also Iran. Look at this. Iran wants to join them too. They're lining up. There's a lot of countries say, yeah, tell us about it. We're going to pay attention to that. But still, it's not going to be swift. It won't happen tomorrow or next week. But I think there's a sign that's coming that dollar hegemony is going to end. It's getting weaker, and sudden changes can occur. And we are being challenged. And I think that's what is going on right now. I think it's also one of the reasons why people are looking for alternatives. They're looking for Chinese yuan backed by gold. But, the advertisements and the promotion of the cryptocurrencies has a lot to do with their unhappiness with the dollar and the transferring dollars, and they're looking for something different. And it remains to be seen how much the cryptocurrency will answer those questions. But I think the fact that cryptocurrencies are there and the price has been bid way up and then they drop is all a reflection of the instability of the precarious nature of our dollar, and the fact that the dollar doesn't have a definition, and that nobody has the true replacement. But ultimately, I think there has to be reform. There has to be a replacement. That doesn't mean a dollar won't exist anymore, but it will have to regain some confidence in order for us to proceed as the reserve currency of the world. But quite frankly, I think the dollar's days are ending as far as being the reserve currency of the world.
Yes, and as Americans, we know what it's like here and what the mentality is. But if we were to put ourselves in foreign shoes and they look at us, our government's $20 trillion in debt. Americans are in debt up to their eyeballs. We have a foreign policy where we just attack nations willy-nilly. If you follow our news, one day we're after Iran, the next North Korea, then Ukraine. So why wouldn't they want to get away from this? And it's interesting because you brought up China, and they're doing this oil for gold. But the Chinese and the Russians for years have been stockpiling gold, and people in our camp have been pointing it out that they're buying gold. Meanwhile, here in America and the West, we've all been duped into thinking that gold is not money anymore. Even Ben Bernanke told you that no, gold is not money. Well, we're seeing now what's taking place, Dr. Paul, and there's a big shift happening.
Yes, and there's a move to join and be organized. It's not China alone. This Eurasia Economic Union is what people are joining, and that's what Iran said they want to join, and other countries may well join too, like Turkey may join. And I think that the numbers are building up, and they will have the organization, and they will represent a large segment of the economy, the world economy, and they will have an influence. The big question is how strong are these? That it also blends in with what's called the Shanghai Cooperative Organization. That's been around for a little bit longer time, but it's the same group of people. It's the Far East and South Central Asia. It's the countries that feel like they've been left out and that we dictate to them so often. But our use of sanctions, I think, offend people. Our use of our foreign policy is offensive. And I think our interference around the world is what finally gets people annoyed. And that is why I think there's going to be this move to an alternative. I think it's something that we have to pay attention to because it is going to affect us. When it really breaks loose, what I think we're going to have is a very much weakening of the U.S. dollar, which means that prices are going to go up and interest rates are going to go up. And then the American people will feel it. Right now, I don't think they feel the problem and don't quite understand it. But I think the thing that will rip us apart in our country is discrepancy in the wealth distribution. But that was a predictable event. It has been explained in Austrian economics when a country deliberately and purposely debase their currency and just print it and promise everybody anything, run a welfare warfare state, that it really hurts the middle class. And that's what's happening. The middle class is being wiped out. And, it remains to be seen just how successful the tax reforms that they just passed will help. And quite frankly, it's going to help somewhat, but it's not going to solve the problem of what a fiat currency does and what these problems were that were built into the system. And all that inflation and malinvestment and debt accumulation. This searching for an answer is avoiding the subject. Debt is a problem. The debt will have to be paid for, and we will have to pay for it. We will become poorer as a nation. Matter of fact, they wouldn't even talk about the debt. The only people it seems like in Washington are talking about the deficit are liberal Democrats who just strike me as, I don't think they're really sincere about worrying about the deficit and the debt accumulation, but they're both guilty. When you're in charge, you don't talk about it. When you're trying to make a point and pander to a few conservatives who do care, but of course there's a few conservatives just recently in Congress were complaining about the proposal on how to get the next year's budget passed, and they were complaining that they're cutting too much money out of the military budget. And these were the conservatives saying, don't cut anything there. And of course, we're back to this whole point about the international, conditions that we have, that we foster, and why the dollar is so weak. And that is one of the places where we should really work on it. But that wasn't touched, and it's going to continue. But the market will eventually catch up. We've been drifting along, with a total fiat dollar since 1971. It's worldwide, something that's never been done before, and the end results will come, and they will not go unnoticed. But I think that is what is causing the events that we're talking about, whether it's the Chinese putting it together and having up, a Chinese yuan to purchase oil and back it by gold, or whether it's the struggle to find an alternative when you see many, many billions of dollars worth of capitalization in cryptocurrencies. And my position there is, of course, it should be legal and permit people to do it. And if it works, fine. But unfortunately, I see the SEC and the IRS watching very closely about that. True money, if you were going to return to true money, it would be if two people had an exchange of a gold dollar for a service, it would be pretty simplistic compared to all the things going on when you have to fill out the reports for the SEC. So I think that the events right now are showing us how disruptive it is and how important it is that we talk eventually about what kind of reforms are we going to have. And of course, I lean toward something that is tangible and something definable and something that history has proven workable. If we live in a modern age where this is going to change and we never had it before, I'm open to it. But I just happen to be influenced so much with the history of money and the requirement that people have something tangible. And even if you can fool the people for a long time, because there's been nothing tangible about our currency since 1971. It still limps along. But eventually, I think the market will demand that the currency that we deal with will be tangible and convertible into something. That's the way all problems with currency destructions over the many, many centuries has been the restoration of trust. And these events, the ups and downs and confidence in money, have been notorious for thousands of years. The kings and the pharaohs of old would cheat on the gold and the silver, and they even had printed money back in a long time ago. So that's notorious because the government's too much involved. That's why I support this position to moving toward the marketplace. And I would get excited if I saw a cryptocurrency 100% convertible into gold. Now, I would sort of be interested in that one.
Yeah, me too, Dr. Paul. And who knows, maybe someday. But I'll finish up. Hopefully we could provide value to our viewers, because this kind of stuff is not going to be on the mainstream media. Many people will be surprised, but it doesn't appear on the media. But outside of our country, there's deals being made, oil deals, economic deals. Countries are using cryptocurrencies to get around U.S. sanctions. I have a few here: Venezuela, Pakistan, Iran, Russia, China, Turkey. They're all changing. And even Saudi Arabia, who our government turns a blind eye to all the time, they're now dealing with Russia for oil. So most of this stuff, this is out of our control. But what is in control is what we do with our own lives. And if we understand what's happening a little bit better, maybe we could prepare a little better. And if we share with others the ideas of liberty, maybe there will be a gold-backed or gold cryptocurrency. Who knows? But as long as it goes in the right direction, I'll be for it.
Oh, very good. And I think people have to realize that the monetary issue is important because it determines the size of government. If you're able to print money out of thin air, and governments have this authority, they do it because they like power and they like influence and they like satisfying people. And you can do that for long periods of time. You can delay the payment. You can borrow money. You can print the money, and you can inflate away the problems. But that only lasts for so long. But the most important reason why they do that is to give government power. But it's based on the flawed concept of Keynesian economics. Deficits don't matter. It's not that they totally ignore it. They talk, well, why worry about a deficit? And, it's important that we take care of the people. It's important that we, exert ourselves and spread American exceptionalism around the world. And all that is, it's sort of deceiving oneself if they believe this is the case. But so it's a philosophic issue, it's a power issue, and it's wishful thinking. But I think if we want to live in a free society with the goal being liberty, I think we have to think, we cannot ignore the principles of the moral principles which give us a sound currency. The founders understood it, and unfortunately we haven't taken any of their advice on very many things. So one day, because this to me is interesting, because I believe, of course, that we will address this issue, and we're doing it more every day, and I think the events we just talked about emphasize this. Chris, I want to thank you very much for being with us today.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good, and I want to thank our viewers for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Go there, check them out. I just crashed my browser, so give me a second. because I did have a little Bitcoin news here I wanted to cover. It'll take me a second to bring this back up because I know exactly where it's at. Luckily, it's not too far. As long as they did it, lose it, and I can get rid of all these pop-up ads. Someone told me to do that to my site, and I don't like pop-up ads that pop up over the screen right in the middle of crap, so I wasn't going to go that route. And I know how much it really just kind of irks people that visit a website when you have a pop-up ad pop up. And it takes a second to find the little X in the pop-up ad. That's what I've had to deal with here. Okay, they did bury it. It's a problem when I pull up all this stuff so early in the day, my browser tends to want to crash later on, and then I'm sitting here trying to re-find it. I'm going to have to search for it. If I can find a search box in this. The site changed so much. Now I don't know how to find old stuff without just loading and loading. Okay, now I'm not finding it at all. And again, they don't give me a search box, so... Well, I did have another one here. This one, out of the Washington Post. The easiest way to tell that Bitcoin is a huge bubble. Now, I'm going to read this and then I'll talk about it here. If you want to succeed in business, there's one thing, just one thing you need. Stupid pop-up freaking ads. Okay. And of course, Washington Post with your stupid pop-up ads. No one cares. No one's going to shop. No one gives a crap. If you want to succeed in business, there's one thing, just one thing you need to do. That isn't making money. How quaint. But rather adding the word blockchain to your company's name. Don't believe me? Just ask the biotech firm Biotix, which saw its stock price nearly double after it announced it was changing its name to Riot Blockchain and shifting its focus, or pivoting, as CEOs like to say, to cryptocurrencies. Or the Long Island Iced Tea Company, whose market value increased 500% after it rebranded itself as the Long Blockchain Corp. And said it would move beyond just making soft drinks to start looking for an investment in opportunities that leverage the benefits of blockchain technology. Now, that's not Bitcoin, this is blockchain. To be honest, though, you don't even have to use the word blockchain in your name as long as you say you'll be using it in your business. That was all it took for a failing Chinese juice company to make its stock shoot up 150% last week, or for a small financial tech firm to send its shares almost straight line up to 2,600% during that same time. If this sounds like the most obvious bubble ever, even more so than the tulip, Beanie Babies or .com manias, well, that's because it is. And it might already be popping. Now, for the uninitiated, a blockchain is just a record of every transaction a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin has ever been used for. The important thing to understand, though, is that it is also public record. The way it works is that every time a new Bitcoin is mined, that is, someone wins it by solving computational complex math problems. Everyone who's a part of the Bitcoin network updates their list of who owns what. This might not sound like that big of a deal, but it's potentially revolutionary. It means that unlike with, say, dollars, you don't need a bank to tell you who has Bitcoin to send and who doesn't. And that description of how blockchain works is a very, it's not quite how it works, how they worded it. And I think by reading that, it sounds like someone kind of explained the basics of how it worked to this gentleman, and then he kind of wrote this article trying to explain how blockchain works. But really, like, it's not just when you mine it. If I transfer a Bitcoin to you, the blockchain verifies that. And what it does is it allows it allows multiple sources to verify it rather than just one source. Therefore, it's basically multiple times verified within, a very, very, very short time. And what that does is it prevents fraud in a way, because let's say someone tried to basically manipulate the system or hack the system and make it seem like you were receiving more Bitcoin than you were supposed to. You might be able to manipulate, one blockchain, area, but you're not going to affect everybody's blockchain. Therefore, it can't get verified. That's a little bit more of how I've been, shown this, and I still don't even get it completely. I get the basics of it. I think a little bit more than this gentleman does. So really, you have to be into that. I'm not a Bitcoin miner. I don't, what Bitcoin I do have is so minuscule. It could jump up, a whole bunch more, and yay. I might walk out with $100 if it multiplies enough, but probably not. Not anytime soon. Says everybody already knows that it's right there in the blockchain, so there's a chance then that we might eventually be able to transfer things online without having to pay anyone to do it. But it's only that, a chance. Bitcoin isn't actually good at these things right now, and it might never be. The most immediate problem is that Bitcoin has artificially given itself a very limited amount of bandwidth to process transactions that, guess what, isn't sufficient to process even if it's very limited number of transactions. That's created a long line of people waiting for their Bitcoin deals to clear. A line that you have to pay an average of $50 to get to the front of today. Now, as easy as that would be to fix technically, it's hard politically. Now, I'm not sure who's doing his Bitcoin transactions, but it doesn't take that long. I have bank transactions that take, 2 days for no reason. People aren't waiting that long for their Bitcoin. And I hate banks. I don't usually leave money in a bank. I put money in the bank to pay the bills. That's about it. You need to get Bitcoin's many medium-sized players to go against their own interests by making the coins hold more data and harder for them to mine. This guy has no idea how Bitcoin works. Although even that might not be enough to keep Bitcoin from being useless. Nobody wants to spend a currency they think is going to make them rich. They'd rather use something that isn't acting like their 401k for their day-to-day purchases. Well, you should be purchasing right now while Bitcoin's up. You wouldn't want to hold on to Bitcoin at the top. It says, even if that means still having to pay the 2% transaction fees they do when they buy things online. After all, it's not like people really mind those. Credit card companies actually give them something they want for them. The ability to undo transactions if they've been hacked or scammed. That Bitcoin doesn't. Which is to say that Bitcoin isn't getting any closer to working as a currency or a payment system. Not that investors seem to care. They pushed the price from around $900 last year to as much as $19,500 last week for no apparent reason at all, which is as good a description as there is for why it then promptly lost half its value and even more promptly bounced back to almost $16,000. Bitcoin is Schrodinger's bubble. It is simultaneously inflating and deflating depending on how quickly an observer can click refresh. The only thing Bitcoin is actually good for is getting people excited that it will be good for something. It excels at that. How? Well, it's the best type of technological marvel. One we haven't figured out yet. That lets people project whatever utopian fantasy they want onto it. And from there, it quickly acquires a momentum of its own. And you can read the rest of that there. Now, the reason Bitcoin is a bubble right now is because it's gone up too fast. But you have to also know what causes things like that to jump up that fast. And part of it is a crap load of miners have increased their capacity for mining. More miners came on board and more companies started accepting Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not good for anything. You could go on Overstock and, spend Bitcoin. What do you mean Bitcoin isn't good for anything? So, the first transaction guy was able to, trade his Bitcoin off for a pizza. So it's good. It does do things. But it's not, some save-all solution to anything either. And, the way Bitcoin works and blah, blah, blah. He evidently does not understand Bitcoin. Someone explained it to him very vaguely. He got the wrong idea about Bitcoin. And he just does not understand either that or he's purposely doing a hack job to try to discredit Bitcoin. And again, I tell people this all the time. If you're getting a Bitcoin, don't throw a whole bunch of marbles into Bitcoin. I was telling them that when it was $20 a Bitcoin. Look at where those people are probably now with those Bitcoins they spent $20 on. Never put all your eggs in one basket, but surely put a egg in a whole bunch of baskets. There's things that you do to prevent your wealth from being lost. Some of the wealthiest people in this country and on this globe do not have one or two investments. They have 50, 60 different investments going on in some form or fashion. They'll have multiple businesses, 2, 3 businesses. They'll have property on top of that. They'll have gold, silver, a bank account, Bitcoin. They invest in other countries, other currencies. They play the stock market. But we've been taught, go to work, put money in a 401k. So now you're going to let someone else play with your money in the stock market and hope when you go to retire, that's going to be enough money for you to retire on. If they don't lose it when the stock market crashes again from the next bubble. And that's the thing. What's really kind of been playing a destabilization in Bitcoin right now are people are playing it like the stock, because you can pull it up on your little ticker and it shows you a graph that looks just like your stock market graph. Well, that's okay if you're trading currencies. But when you have a whole bunch of people playing Bitcoin more as a currency stock rather than, buying Bitcoin so you have a little Bitcoin to spend if that becomes a better thing. If the U.S. dollar drops off and it ain't worth crap and you have Bitcoin and it's still worth something, now you have something that, Bitcoin's worth more than my dollar is now, so I can, still purchase things I need. Dollar is not worth crap, the yuan is, but Bitcoin's worth a lot because they're using it worldwide and they're trading it in yuans. Yeah, it could get me a lot of dollars, but it could get me yuans that are worth more. Or, pick a country, pick, goods, you don't know exactly where it's going to go. Again, put an egg in that basket. Put an egg in the gold and silver basket. Put an egg in if you want to play the stock market, or put some 401k out. Also put an egg in, other things. You got to prepare for the worst. That way, in the best of times, you prosper beyond belief. And people that listened to me when I was saying that at $20 a Bitcoin, at $50, $100, $200 a Bitcoin, $500. People, when I was saying that at $500 a Bitcoin, said you're freaking nuts to put it in when Bitcoin is so high. I said it'll drop because it jumped up too high, too quick. It'll drop off. What happened? Well, it dropped back down to, 300, 250, 220. Then it started going up. 225, 300. Sat there for a while. Again, it's been inflated too much. Not saying it's back down to 500. No, it's not. honestly, I think Bitcoin will probably drop down to around the 10,000 range. And it'll bounce down a little bit, bounce up a little bit, bounce down a little bit, bounce up, average around 10,000. At least for the first quarter of 2018. After that, it depends on who else jumps on the Bitcoin wagon. Because if more companies go, with Bitcoin, we should have got in it back then, we're going to get in it now. As long as people don't divest in Bitcoin at an alarming rate and then have companies divest in Bitcoin. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. In actuality, there's large corporations that are looking into getting into Bitcoin mining. And the thing is they're late to the game, but these large corporations, they're going to have the resources to start mining that Bitcoin. And they could seriously put some of these real small miners out. The problem that most smaller ones have is cooling. They burn through machines to mine this Bitcoin. It's not just the mathematical equations that your computer has to be able to. It produces a lot, and I mean a lot of heat. That's where it can, get expensive. At the same time, you could be making money. But these large corporations, they can invest a whole bunch of money into it. They can turn basically a large building into a giant freezer, basically a cooler, and run all those machines. Might be able to turn into a freezer if you were sticking meat in it, but with all the machines in there, it's probably just going to act as a cooler. It'll keep things cool. It won't freeze, but these can produce a lot of heat. I know there are, over in China, Bitcoin miners that are in northern China near, getting up there around Russia area. They're up there because of the cold climate, and they're able to keep their stuff a little bit cooler. And really, I think corporations, if they want to get into it, they're going to basically have to jump on it. It's not going to be something long term. It's going to have to be a quick investment in the ability to mine it to the point they can put out all the small miners. Small miners won't be able to mine enough compared to them. They're already running into that issue, can we compete with the other small miners? Well, if a big corporation comes in, they're going to put all the small miners out. Okay, we're going to kind of switch it up here. Give me a minute. Okay, we're going to dive into Stefan Molyneux clip here. And this is with Steven Crowder. And this one is titled United Nations Evil. So I want to dive into this and we'll talk about this here. And most of my listeners know what I believe about the United Nations. So we'll go ahead and dive into this.
Hashtag Crowder CNN live stream. Make sure it's trending for this guy because people like him. And we're glad to have him on the show since we just took a steaming dump on Canada. I'm sorry that was your intro. At Stefan Molyneux, that's with an X. Stefan, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, Stephen. How you doing? Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Horribly. I'm not going to lie to you. I miss because we're doing the 16-hour CNN live stream. I'm without a hint.
Wait.
Oh no.
I have I've got my blast helmet, my stormtrooper outfit. I've got tearaway pants for no particular reason. And I'm ready for CNN to scour my brain of reason and evidence. All my years of philosophical training can be taken out by one pixel-based shotgun blast of irrationality from the mainstream media. I'm set, baby.
Is it wrong that looks refreshing?
No. Well, it may look more refreshing than CNN. That's all I'm saying.
I know. No, I know. I look at it. I'm like, oh. It's like the oasis. It's like the mirage in the middle of the desert. I'm sitting there going, oh. I'm looking at you right now.
It's like a spirit
and you look like a hot. You look like a. Stefan is a hot dog, and the Clorox is just like a martini. All right, at Stefan Molyneux. Stefan, I don't know if you've been following at all. I don't know if you've been following the stream at all, but do you want me to catch you up to speed, just a brief hit list of some of the biases?
Just in case people end up only watching this segment, which I'm not saying I'd recommend it. I'm just saying it's going to be the best segment. But you might as well catch up people in case they just dip in here.
Okay, so let me do this really quick. So right away we tuned in, stoking the Russian hysteria with the idea that Trump is going to fire Mueller. Of course, he already said that he wasn't. Maybe he will, but he said that he wouldn't. Adam Schiff on Mueller probe was up there. 9 months ago, he said he had evidence on President Donald Trump. There's been nothing. And they had him on here for like half an hour. Not a single mention, not one of uranium one trending on Twitter, depending where you are. That's number 3, and that's number 4. We were number 3. So sorry, a little ego there. Chip program, they literally said 9 million Tiny Tims will die because Republicans don't want to fund the child health care initiative. It's not true. They actually put some legislation forward to fund it for another 5 years. Democrats just don't like the mechanism of funding. No mention of the Melbourne attacker being an Afghani named Saeed Naori. They just said some guy ran over some people in Melbourne. Holiday shoppers, by the way, not Christmas shoppers, the cherry on top of the shit cake. And then we have, sorry, there's no censoring here today. Mysterious death of Border Patrol agent. They were saying, mysterious, what's the cause? 2 illegal immigrant drug cartels are the only suspects right now. We can't confirm it, but they didn't even mention it at all. They had D. Simone Sanders on to talk about the Mueller probe, who, of course, mocked Trump supporters being beaten by black mobs, saying poor white people. And, of course, they've been talking about Israel nonstop and the embassy, saying, basically been presenting it as though this is some kind of a new idea to move the embassy to Jerusalem, not talking about the 1995 vote for the embassy to be moved to Jerusalem and it to be recognized as Israeli capital no later than May 1999. That's just the hit list from 8 o'clock a.m. to now, Stefan. Your floor.
Right. Well, first of all, I mean, the idea that they would find Mueller would be ridiculous. Mueller is like the Christmas gift that keeps on giving. Because with Mueller, you have this whole Russia hysteria. Russian bears are crawling up my leg, and not in the way that I like. And in the meantime, Trump can go around fixing the country while everyone's distracted. Squirrel! Russians! They're off doing their crazy stuff. And Mueller should just keep going. I'm really sorry for all the people whose life savings are being scoured clear by this political witch hunt. But it does give the Democrats something to focus on that keeps them distracted while the country gets saved.
Well, I am amazed that there's no mention of uranium-1. And they even said, is it just meddling or was there collusion? As though there isn't an answer number 3. Maybe none of it. Maybe Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. It's did he meddle? Did they meddle, or did he just collude? And then they go into Mueller and they have Schiff, who's been promising evidence for 9 months. Like you said, it's a gift because they promise evidence and then there's nothing, and they move on down the trail.
But wouldn't it be terrible, as Hillary Clinton said, wouldn't it be terrible, shocking, and appalling, Stephen, if Trump did not recognize and accept the outcome of a democratic election? Wouldn't that just be the worst conceivable thing in the world? Oh, Lord, if you ever want to know what's really going on in the mind of a leftist, just look what they're accusing other people of, and that's their darkest acted out fantasies.
I think you're right. Right now, they just showed a chart here up on CNN that 22% were the biggest contributors to the UN. Stefan, do you think we should even be, I said the United States. I know, listen, you're our friends over there in Canada, but I know you'd probably rather be American at this point. You're trying. You're doing better. Do you think the U.S. should be involved with the UN at all at this point?
Oh, no. No. The UN is a massive spider-based cancer for spreading leftism around the planet. The idea that you have, Saudi Arabia chairing the Women's Rights Commissions, and I don't know, it was like Zimbabwe on the Human Rights Council and so on. It's affirmative action for evil people. I like the idea that this should have anything to do with anything.
What if we just cut off a portion of the clitoris, right? And UN's like, yeah, that sounds good.
I'm just pretty much sure that on no sane planet should gynecologists be equipped with chainsaws. That is just not the way a sane planet should ever operate. So, no, the UN, and I like what Trump said. He said, hey, you don't like the Jerusalem thing? Maybe we'll just cut your foreign aid. Now, why there's foreign aid to begin with is completely beyond me. I don't know if it's white guilt or if it's just buying off votes or whatever, but, how about you just, anybody who says anything, are you breathing? Okay, no foreign aid for you. I mean, it's terrible for the countries involved. It's just the whole process of transferring money from poor people in rich countries to rich people in poor countries. And it's just another form of corporate welfare because you give a bunch of money to Zimbabwe in American dollars. They end up having to spend it someplace, which benefits American companies. So, yeah, let's just get rid of foreign aid completely. It hasn't worked. The countries are not better off, and the deficit just keeps growing in America and all the Western countries. So, yeah, this internationalism thing, it comes out of a fundamental misunderstanding. Everyone thinks, well, the reason why there was a Second World War is that people weren't talking enough. So let's get a place together where people can talk and everything will be fine. And now we just have another kind of invasion going on.
Right. Hold on. Hey, sound guy, Edward, make sure you close both doors when you come in. We have a photo, a red room, and there are two doors, and one of them was being left open, so I could hear someone yelling.
I thought it was it not going to be a draft? I don't see any nipples. I was hoping that maybe there'd be a draft.
I don't care. I'm going to show you some nipples.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Hang on.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this. We're sponsored by Walther now, a firearm company with balls. And so look at this, Stefan. I'm appendix carrying. Pow, pow, pow. That's a Walther. That's a Walther firearm there. They saw the show, and they said, we'll sponsor you anyway. So how good is that?
Did they specifically say that it should be in your groin? Was that in the contract, or is just a rider that you have? I know I want nothing but red M&Ms and a gun where my dick should be.
Well, there is no other rider than me. So, what?
It's a holster with options.
Yeah, it's a holster with options. It's actually a Nate squared holster. So I wear it on the side, but here with the onesie, it was kind of hard to do. It wasn't because there's no loop. Anyways, long story short. But here, it's funny that you mentioned this. No foreign aid. I'm actually kind of on board with that. But what's ironic here, so let's both agree on that. But now let's get into the reality that there is foreign aid. The only place liberals have problems with foreign aid is the one place that actually respects to some degree human rights right now, Israel. They have no problem with foreign aid with Saudi Arabia. They want more foreign aid to Hamas. But really, today, this is a referendum on not hating Israel. We're not even talking about foreign aid today. We're just talking about recognizing an embassy that was already passed as a bill in 1995. So as someone who's a libertarian, yourself, you're consistent, no foreign aid across the board. But do you see this irony that the only time liberals have a problem with foreign aid is when it is Israel?
Well, of course, the big problem with Israel for the liberals, Stephen, is that the Jews in Israel have a very strong in-group preference. They don't allow migrants. They're kicking out a bunch of people who came in. They have a wall. Right. They have a sense of culture, of history, of pride, and they want to keep the country for themselves. Now, that very idea gives liberals hives and shakes and spina bifida and Lord knows what else. So I think that they're concerned that a cultural country that wishes to keep its own identity exists because, by God, man, what if that idea would have spread elsewhere? What would happen? Oh, the horror.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like we talked about here in the United States, the equivalent there isn't really a race of people. There are Jews as a race of people, but people who are, okay, boom, you subscribe to the Constitution. When you come here, you actually take this naturalization oath, and if you don't believe it, you're out. That's terrifying to liberals here in the United States. What makes an American is a set of ideals, and they go, well, hold on a second. No. You don't have to believe in freedom of speech. You don't have to believe in the Second Amendment. What are you talking about? That's in the oath when you become a citizen here. Yeah, it is crazy to me. Here's my situation with Israel, and I've talked about this, and this is not necessarily super popular with the Christian community. No foreign aid, period. Now, Israel is a pivotal military ally of ours because it's the one area where, listen, we need a place to land, we need a place to refuel, we need a safe haven where there's an entire sea of people who want to destroy us. But you can do that without the kind of money that exchanges hands as it does right now. But if you look at Ron Paul, Rand Paul. What they basically said is we're funding to the tune of all of these countries around Israel. If you add it all up, we're giving far more money to countries who want to eviscerate Israel than Israel itself. We give more to them individually, but if you just say no funding at all, right? No funding at all to anybody, Israel would actually be better off because of the funding we give to other countries who want to kill them. That, to me, is entirely sensible.
Well, and as far as I understand it, I'm no expert on the economics, Stephen, but as far as I understand it, Jews in America, not the poorest demographic in the known universe. So, if people want to help a country, they can write checks and send money. That it's not like there'll be no help going from America to Israel if there's no foreign aid. But as you're right, I mean, why are you selling hundreds of billions of dollars of arms to places like Saudi Arabia and also giving money to defense for Israel? I mean, talk about funding both sides of the coin. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And here's something I don't understand, too. Like, Saudi Arabia, I get it, and you look back, okay, then it goes all the way back to the Clintons and the Bushes, and there were allyship with Saudi Arabia, and then you kind of have it with the UAE. Qatar, Clockboy, Clockboy, gosh, that was this year, Clockboy, what a long year.
Was that? No, it wasn't. Really?
Wasn't it?
I've so lost track. We'll talk about it. I've so lost track.
He did a resurgence
these days.
He came back.
Yeah.
He went away and then he came back.
He tried a lawsuit. He moved overseas. He came back, and it was a big mess.
Yeah, it was Clockboy 2, back to the briefcase. So he he didn't. By the way, he didn't build anything. He put a Philips alarm clock in a briefcase and he turned up the volume. And he was like, "Hey guys, nothing to see here."
CNN didn't report that. No one knows.
What was that?
CNN didn't report that.
No, CNN didn't report it. So what's crazy to me is, like you said, we're talking about this. Every now and then we have an alliance with someone in the Middle East not named Israel. Israel's been pretty consistent here over the last couple of decades. But Saudi Arabia, then they screw up. Egypt, then they screw up. Turkey, then they screw up. Even if you go back to, before the Iran conflict, you look, there were all different kinds of alliance, and it always goes sour. So my whole thing is, I understand that people say, well, listen, we have to be diplomatic, but you know they're going to turn on you at some point. At this point, we're going to lose some of the biggest alliances just because we say, we can put the embassy in Jerusalem. So why do it? Just say no more money. That's it. None. Zero. How about that?
Well, can you imagine? Let's just do a thought exercise here for you and your listeners.
I warn you, my thoughts are slower than usual after 5 hours of CNN.
Oh no! Listen, I specifically wanted to come in later just to have a slight intellectual advantage. You've got me beat on biceps, but if you're exhausted, I might have a chance. But let's imagine that there was a religion somewhere out there in the world that specifically allowed its adherents to lie to people who weren't part of that religion and be perfectly moral. Like, because with Christianity, it's a, do not bear false witness and so on, and it's a universal commandment. But let's just imagine there are a couple of religions out there that specifically say, totally fine. In fact, if it's advantageous for your religion, you can completely lie to people not part of your religion. And let's say that America, or the West as a whole, didn't really notice that particular clause and entered into these contracts with people whose religion specifically says they never have to keep a contract with you in any way, shape, or form. I wonder if a lot of foreign policy could be improved by just reading a few sections of, say, said religious text and making decisions accordingly.
That's true. You know what? You can't even ask them, I think, by the way, this thought exercise. I believe he's speaking of the Islamic belief of taqiyya, which is you're allowed to lie. By the way, you're allowed to lie in times of war. Or times of oppression. What is a time of oppression? Anytime you're not the ruling class with everyone subjugated. So basically, it's always a time of oppression until Islam takes over the entire world. The problem is you can't even ask them to renounce taqiyya. So it's not. You can't.
Let's say certain people took an oath. Anyway.
It's like, I promise. So no taqiyya. No. You swear. I swear to God. Your God. I swear to any God. Yeah, I know.
What if people swore on a Bible? Anyway, okay. This could go on and on. This could go on and on.
Can you imagine? I know.
No,
all right.
I can't. I mean, those Klingons, they've got some, odd beliefs. Let's just put it that way.
Hold on 1 second. Let's let Stefan hear this. John King is talking. UN votes to condemn Trump's Jerusalem decision.
Obamacare fixes.
It's just recycling.
In a year in which Republicans are trying to protect their majorities, and you already see the beginnings of a Democratic wave because of the president's unpopularity. Huh?
This is better than. I really said this, but Donald Trump is right on the politics here. A shutdown will be terrible tomorrow.
Do you think they know we're watching them?
This huge tax bill.
Here's what's crazy, Stefan, right? They have all this money. They are talking about the same thing that they've been talking about from this morning. There is nothing new. And they're paying them to have this opulent set and a round table. And all they are doing is discussing the same thing we are, except with a lag, because they have to have middlemen get them the breaking news online. literally today they've had like breaking news. Well, that's not breaking. We've known this for 30 minutes. I mean, do you think we're watching them die? Do you think that CNN, do you think in 5 years' time, cable news as we know it won't really exist? It'll be some other form?
Oh, listen, Stephen, I mean, come on. You and I and the audiences that we have and the trajectory of our growth, like we just ran the numbers. My channel grew 20% year over year.
Nice.
We're not watching them die. We're helping them. We're like the nurse. We're like the nurse in the operating room. It's like, well, this patient doesn't seem to be doing well. Oops. Kicked out the plug. Well, I guess I just saved everybody some money. So, no, I like to think that I'm not just a passive participant in watching the decaying orbit of the mainstream media as it burns up in the stratosphere of intelligent thought and alternative media. I like to think that I'm not just helping someone fly, I'm giving them a little bit of a push as well. So, yeah, I think we're a little bit more active than just observers.
I think you're right. I think you've done a lot. And then I think all the people who've joined Mug Club today, they're basically the person with the pillow going, hey, I can't bear to watch this. Okay.
Well, let me just say one other thing, just looking at that CNN panel. This question of diversity is interesting because it seems to me that they're only focused on the surface with regards to diversity. Because, of course, on CNN, you never want a libertarian. You might get a rhino sort of floating through from time to time who's, willing to say a few things to the Republican base while basically conforming with what the left wants. But any actual diversity of opinion at CNN is completely absent. Yeah. So they have, I guess, women and blacks and other groups who all have the same beliefs. So in other words, they say diversity is only skin deep. Diversity is like what covers your dome, what's inside your brain. There can be no diversity of any kind, any way, shape, or form. No divergent opinions, no opposite arguments, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And that to me is really interesting because I value diversity of opinion. Nobody has a monopoly on truth and we all benefit from having our arguments sharpened by opposition. But with CNN, it is this monotonous sameness. And this is why I think that the audience for CNN is sort of functionally retarded because smart people want... They don't like
one
things
second, hold on 1 second. 128 to 9, the vote to condemn Trump's Jerusalem decision. And it was 300 something to like 5 or 7. It was like 300 something to 50 to recognize it as the embassy in 95. It was 97 to 3 or 95 to 3 or 93 to 5. So it's just so funny. UN is a complete flip flop of, countries not beholden to being politically correct. Sorry, continue with your thought.
It's a team thing. Right. I mean, if you take the jerseys of your team and put them on the other team, suddenly you swarm to the other side of the stadium and start cheering for them. It's just a team thing. You've seen all of these videos that people have online and they take a Trump speech and they go to a leftist and they say, Obama made the speech. What do you think? And they're like, oh, it's magical. I'm transported. I'm floating. I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm in the dopamine nirvana drip of mainstream media kibble.
Right.
And so they don't care about the content. It's just the team. The left has their team. The right has their team. And there's no principles involved, certainly on the left. I think on the right, the never-Trumpers were principle-less, although I think they're kind of coming around now. But it's
I see it the other way.
There's no moral content to any of this.
I see them meeting in the middle because Trump hadn't really accomplished a whole lot until this tax bill. And the net neutrality kind of thing. I see both of them kind of coming and going, okay, he's doing some stuff finally at the end of the year. I saw a lot of Trump people are upset they didn't get the wall done. And then Never Trumpers saying, told you so. And now I see pro-Trump people and the Never Trumpers going, all right, this is good right now. This is a good end of year wrap.
Well, I don't agree that he didn't get much done. It's just that he didn't get stuff done that changes things now. But in terms of, SCOTUS, Gorsuch on the bench, in terms of other stuff that happened behind the scenes, there's a lot of sort of building for the future. I mean, the guy's settling in for another 7 years and, all going well, he's going to get them. So I think he's kind of building for the future. It's like saying, well, there's nothing going up on the building. It's like, yeah, but blueprints are being drawn up furiously and bids are being put together. So it takes a while for stuff to manifest. This is one of the big manifestations. And isn't it amazing, Stephen? I just talk about the ultimate Grinch party. It's like, wait, American workers are getting more money for Christmas? That's the worst thing in the world.
I know.
Like, are you kidding? Do you have no idea how this looks? Do you have no idea of the Grinch-like savage optics of this? Oh, no, people are keeping more of their own money to spend on their families at Christmas. I can't stop it.
I had someone tell me, because everyone here got a salary, which is better than most people. out there, and there's a huge or big, really big, I like to say huge, Christmas bonus incentive. And because the reason for that is with us, Q4 with sponsors, or it used to be YouTube, it's exponentially higher, right? With advertisers, they dump all their ad money. And so I'm like, so if we hit these certain things, you guys get really big bonuses. And someone actually bitched about this bill on Twitter. I don't have it up in front of me, and said, yeah, that's nothing new. My corporate employer used to do this, give us bonuses at the end of the year so they could get a tax break. So that's because they make a bunch of money at the end of the year. A lot of businesses, like Gerald, he works in wine. He gets most of his orders. If you work in retail, most of your orders, if you work in commercials, most of your orders come in Q4. As a matter of fact, 70% of next year, Q4, by the way, for people who don't know, means fourth quarter of the year. 70% of next year's ad inventory is sold in the fourth quarter of this year because they're making a bet on what their tax burden is going to be the next year. It really does come down to appealing to selfishness. I really do think that's what it is. People are like, well, they're just doing it to avoid taxes. And you got $10,000.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that if you lower taxes, people get more money. I think that's kind of course. And this is true because the left, every time they want to get rid of something, they raise taxes on it. So they're completely aware that taxes fundamentally fuel economic decisions. My favorite of the day, well, there were two, if you don't mind, indulge me for a second.
Go ahead.
Bill Kristol.
Hold on, let me just check the schedule and see.
I don't know, Pillsbury
one second, let me
Doughboy
check the schedule here. 1 second. Yeah, you got time. You're good. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So Bill Kristol tweeted out, isn't there something creepy about corporations giving cash bonuses to employees explicitly because of the passage of certain legislation or because of specific regulatory actions? Doesn't it have something of a road to corporatist serfdom feel to it? What? I'm sorry, Bill, that people are getting more money around Christmas and that a bunch of companies have raised the minimum amount they'll pay to employees to $15 an hour. I'm sorry. I have no idea in what universe that is a bad thing. That is a terrible. Oh, no. We're now being enslaved by corporations who are giving us more money out of the goodness of their hearts and the competition of the market. It's like and Pelosi. Oh, Lord. Shamefully, Republicans were cheering against the children as they robbed from their future and ransacked the middle class to reward the rich. Okay, Pelosi. Michelle Malkin had a great quote. She said, hush, woman, your net worth in 2016 was $83 million on a less than $200,000 a year government salary.
How is Pelosi worth that
Nancy
much?
Pelosi, the left is very concerned about the children, which is why they're for abortion up to kindergarten and massive national debts to be passed along to the next generation. But now you see they care about the children, and it's so funny to watch the left caring about deficits, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, they're like a $1.5 trillion deficit over the next 10 years. I'm like, we had 10 trillion added over the last 8. You guys couldn't care less. And I do think that Republicans, conservatives need to be concerned about that, need to be consistent. Now, here's the deal. That passed, and now Democrats are holding them hostage where it comes to spending cuts. Nothing. They don't want to cut anything. So this is why it's so funny. This is the bias by omission. CNN actually, because if there's a shutdown this time, it'll be the Democrats, just like it was the Republicans last time. We owned it. You know why? Because we said, we're fine with it. If it comes to with this kind of an increase in the deficit, this kind of attack, shut down. And we owned it. We were the villains. Republicans said, fine. But right now, they know that most people don't want to see a shutdown. So it said, Trump, says Democrats want shutdown. It's like, well, just say Democrats want the shutdown. But they had to, because they know it's bad, they had to put Trump, just commenting on them wanting the shutdown. Yeah, I mean, a good example, we've just added now to our kind of Rolodex here, one more hire. We were going to hire 2 more people here coming in the new year. Now we're going to hire 3. If this bill, if this bill is it takes effect very quickly and we see the actual ramifications, people are thinking, yeah, if we have more money, we hire more people. And let's say we hire another person, right, who's unemployed, and I make more money. I don't get the problem with that. I don't understand.
Well, here's the thing, too, right? So, and this is a little technical, but I really want people to understand this. So there's a big problem with the American tax code, which I won't get into the details of it, but basically it's the difference between territorial and worldwide taxation. So what this means is I think it's about $2.4 trillion. That's trillion dollars that American corporations who are multinationals have parked in overseas bank accounts that they don't want to bring back to the United States because the taxes are going to be ridiculous. At a 35% corporate tax rate, one of the highest in the world. Now, this changes all of that, and it allows them to bring the money back for, I think it's about a 15% tax on cash, like an 8% tax on equipment and so on. So this could potentially mean hundreds of billions or even trillions of dollars rolling back into the U.S. economy to be invested, to grow, to raise wages, to drive economic growth. And it seems to me now that the left has simply become a parody of patriotism. I think they're not concerned that the tax bill, the tax cuts are going to fail. They're concerned that it's going to succeed and it's going to transition more people from receiving government money to paying taxes. Because when you pay taxes, suddenly you care about your tax rates. When you're receiving money, not so much. And their whole base could be eviscerated through this process.
Well, you were saying that too, right? In another show, not gay, Jared. That's just because you've been silent for like an hour, so I want people to know you're still alive. But when you were in college, you didn't really think about it. And you were never liberal, but you never really thought about taxes and how it would affect you.
I didn't know how any of this.
Now I bet you think about
insurance works.
Now I bet you think about taxes. Now I bet you get every write-off
you
possibly can, and you're not necessarily Bernie Sanders wealthy or Nancy Pelosi wealthy, but you do okay. Yeah, it really is. It's amazing to me. Like here, let me simplify it because you were getting technical. What we want to do here, like the biggest effect is going to be corporations. Yes. Now, without getting too technical, the reason that'll be the biggest effect of this tax bill is because we're going to lower our corporate tax rate from the highest in the industrialized world to just be the same as most European nations. Okay? Is that too technical for people out there? You can tweet me and Stefan Molyneux, use the hashtag CNN livestream. We're just going to lower it to say like the price of the UK. And I think it was actually Apple. Someone was warning, saying, hey, you're going to have a flux of incoming investments. So you better be ready for that and have infrastructure for that, because now the United States is the best place to start a buess because obviously of the environment fostering innovation. But then it's not the best place
to listen to people to Hong Kong.
Yeah. But now it wasn't the best place for people to keep a business. Now it's going to be both, or at least competitive on both. And that's a huge deal. By the way, let me end on this because we do have to get going, Stefan Molyneux. The net neutrality thing, did you not find this hysterical that all YouTubers were acting as net neutrality? And I'm going, hold on a second, Google, Facebook, YouTube, they all support it. They have all clearly censored. And Tim Cook of Apple, I just think this is the perfect irony, was pro net neutrality. And now we find out that they're throttling old phones.
No, that's right. Let me ask you this just before we go. What was your first, I got my first job when I was 10, but I started paying taxes when I was 11, when I was working in a bookstore. And you get that first paycheck and you're like, because in your mind, you're like, oh, I was making $2.50 an hour back in the day, right? Like, oh, I worked 4 hours. That's $10, which was, a good chunk of money.
Right. And
then you get your paycheck and it's like, well, let's just say it's not $10. And I think the fact that people are getting jobs later and later and later means that they just don't get that, okay, I guess all this stuff isn't free. I am paying for it. And what was your first big tax whiplash?
Well, it's funny because I think in Canada, though, they give it back to you at the end of the year if you're under 18, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure.
Well, this was in England, but
okay.
I don't remember getting anything back.
Okay. Well, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe they withhold it and then you get it all back when you're under 18. So I don't want someone to say you're lying, but I remember my dad, my first real taxable, I'd mowed lawns and shoveled walkways, was when I did Arthur. I was the voice of the brain. I started when I was 12. And these were big checks, right? So they weren't small checks because it was the number 9 rated show of the 90s as far as viewership. And that being said, they weren't huge. People would think you always think you make more, but it was big enough to actually see the taxes. And my dad sat me down and said, okay, this is basically Social Security. This is, assurance maladie. I don't know if that's what the word is in English. That's how we call it in French. I actually have never thought of Medicare, whatever the assurance maladie meant, socialized healthcare. This is what you're paying for. And I remember going oh, but that's a lot. And he said, yeah. I said, but I remember as a kid just being like, but our healthcare is really bad. Mom had to wait over a year to get an MRI. He said, yeah. And I said, okay. He goes, so what do you think about that? And that's when I became a conservative. 12 years old, my first Arthur paycheck. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and so the fact that a lot of kids aren't getting jobs until their 20s. And then maybe they get low-rent jobs where their tax brackets aren't that high. But, the longer you can push off people getting a job, the more that you can make them think that there's all this just free stuff in the world and only mean people want to keep poor people from getting it.
Well, they can just fight for 15, which is ironic because then 4 companies, AT&T, I think it was Boeing, 4 major Fortune 500, probably top 50 companies as far as employers in the United States said they're going to be raising their minimum wage up to $15 an hour. So, look, there are 2 ways to do it. Force businesses to do it and charge them more and tax them more or give them more money. And now we have the fight for 15. All right, Stefan Molyneux, where's the best place for people to find you, brother? You've been fantastic and helped relieve me of hosting duties for, if only a moment.
Well, freedomainradio.com or youtube.com/freedomainradio are the 2 places.
And that was Stefan Molyneux and Steven Crowder. And that was from Stefan Molyneux on YouTube. Check him out, subscribe. He puts out quite a bit. I kind of want to go into the UN part before we move on to other things that they spoke about. A lot of people, know where I stand on the UN. I really think it's just a unelected governing body that tends to think they can govern the world. And yeah, it's made up of other countries, and they said on that clip, you got Saudi Arabia, on the board or council of, women's rights, and Zimbabwe for human rights, and it's everything there is kind of like the bills they pass here. Affordable Care Act, yeah, that it wasn't affordable. When they pass things, it tends to be the opposite. Patriot Act was unpatriotic. Affordable Care Act was unaffordable. So that's kind of how the UN, they got a, Council for Human Rights that has people that don't respect human rights, running it. So, yeah, I don't see the United Nations as legit or needed. I think that's kind of why the League of Nations failed, because of the same issues. Now, Nikki Haley got tough on UN when it came to the funding. And this is what happened. There's an article up at the Blaze. It says, under the Trump administration, the U.S. has been touting a shift in foreign policy that has included withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord and officially declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. After a contentious year, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has announced that the U.S. has negotiated a reduced UN budget for 2018-2019. The budget will be reduced by $285 million. Haley didn't specify if the U.S., which provides the largest share of the UN budget, will reduce its contribution. Learn more about the UN budget cuts with our explainer here, and listen to the clip above for Mike Broomhead's take as he stood in for Glenn on today's show. It says here, Haley released a statement criticizing the UN for mismanaging funding and taking advantage of the U.S. Quote, the inefficiency and overspending of the United Nations are well known. We will no longer let the generosity of the American people be taken advantage of or remain unchecked. The historic reduction in spending, or this historic reduction in spending, in addition to many other moves towards more efficient and accountable UN, is a big step in the right direction. While we are pleased with the results of this year's budget negotiations, you can be sure we'll continue to look at ways to increase the UN's efficiency while protecting our interests. Anything else I should know? Just a reminder, the U.S. is still not getting along well with a lot of the international community after its decision to formally recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In a response, 128 countries voted for a UN resolution demanding the U.S. rescind its recognition and halt plans to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Again, UN telling the U.S. what to do when, well, we basically fund the damn thing. I'm going to try to play the short clip. Hopefully it comes through. I haven't played from this machine for a while, so I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but hopefully it does. I need to see if I can find a little volume button here. Maybe. I'm not used to doing it this way. It's been quite a while. Okay, I think I got it.
Glenn Beck, the Blaze Radio Network.
The U.S. has been and continues to be the strongest ally to Israel. They continue to be our strongest ally in the region. And the President of the United States has decided to do what both parties have put in their platforms now for years and make it official. So when you say something, that words out.
Now, okay. I don't really side with Israel or Pakistan because I think they're both in the wrong. And I've talked about this multiple times. I don't side with people that I believe both sides are in the wrong like that. People are like, oh, Israel, keep settling land. And then you got our people, well, Palestine basically lets Hamas run everything, which they're bad too. And you're both right. So until both sides decide to back off, no side's going to back off. Hence why we shouldn't be involved. I think it's foolish for us to be involved because then we got to pick sides. Now, when it comes to, Israel and Jerusalem versus Tel Aviv for their capital, again, we don't have everybody telling us where our capital needs to be. I don't think, and they can go, oh, your capital's, Houston, Texas now. We'd be like, no, it's Washington, D.C. They'd be like, no, it's Houston. That's where we're putting our embassy. Well, okay. I kind of went over that before. It's, you can claim whatever we want. But at the end of the day, Israel recognizes Jerusalem as their capital. So we can go, oh, nope, it's not. But it doesn't mean anything other than us going, hey, it's not. We can have our, our embassy in Tel Aviv, but we still have to fly or drive our people to Jerusalem to do business. So we still end up in Jerusalem doing business with government. You want to talk about inefficiency, putting your embassy in Tel Aviv and then having to go to Jerusalem and do all the business. And again, it's one of those no-win situations. We can pretend that, still claiming that Tel Aviv's the capital, or we move it, isn't going to change the problems those countries have. Oh, it's going to spark more anger. Listen, don't do anything to get angry at. That's just fact. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Just like these leftist groups here in America. They will believe any lie so they have something to protest. Because it makes them feel important. You have a whole bunch of these hipsters out there thinking they're woke and knowledgeable because someone lied to them and inspired them to go out on the street and protest something they can't. Because if you watch the thousands of videos, all they can repeat is these slogans and these little, snippets of things that they have to parrot because they don't have any independent thought or knowledge of the inside workings of what they're protesting. So now what? So I'm all for pulling, foreign aid out of the UN. Pull it all. Pull every bit of it. Because that's my money. I don't need to pay for foreign aid. And like, Stefan and Steven talked about, guess what? It doesn't work. And it's been proven. And it actually leaves a lot of these countries and communities dependent on that aid. Food aid. Let's go with food aid. There are countries where they no longer know how to grow things that are native in their country for food because for 20 plus years they have been given food. They haven't had to go out and grow it. They wait for the next truck to come in with all the free stuff. And you have these people go, yeah, you got to donate to that and help those people out. I've looked at those type of people and go, really, you think you're helping them out? You want to help them out? Go over there and show them how to grow the food that grows native in their land so they can produce it and feed themselves. You want to help them out. Literally generations of adults in these countries have never learned how to grow their own food. How about we don't have, Obama, when he bombed Libya, instead of just going after, the bad guy, the first target we hit is the man-made, basically river that was made so that farmers could actually grow their food again. So now you have a country that they do know how to farm, but now they're being put in a situation where they can't. You have to have the water. Definitely in a desert. It's not that they don't have the water, it's getting it to where they need a farm. We have to do something different. Okay, let me see. Yeah, hopefully we have enough time. Before I go on to this clip from We Are Changed, they do have a clip that was 6 days ago or something that they put out talking about it, the UN versus Donald Trump, who's right, and Hillary Clinton in trouble. Recommend go check that out. But I want to cover this one before the end of the broadcast, basically play this clip. Going in the new year, I hope everybody had a great holiday. Going in the new year, I hope 2018 brings all my listeners success. I hope that we can continue to grow and inspire freedom. But I wanted to cover this one from We Are Changed. Top 5 conspiracy theories verified true in 2017. So let's go ahead and dive into that.
Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the We Are Changed video show. It doesn't matter. But as we're marking the end of 2017, this has really been a year that the supposed conspiracy theorists have been vindicated in, leaving egg on the face of many mainstream media outlets that will stay and rot there for the next coming years. Not just any egg. Let's make it an ostrich egg. I digress. But regardless, that's why I wanted to make this video and address the 5 major bombshells that the public thought was a conspiracy theory but turned out to be true in 2017. And the number one story uncovered this year is about the sex abuse committed by the elites and upper echelons in our society. And of course, the dam broke after the well-connected media mogul Harvey Weinstein was exposed for his rampant sexual abuse that he has committed to countless numbers of victims, while at the same time also hiring Mossad agents to spy on his victims and prevent him from being legally held accountable for them. And then after that, the list grew tremendously, and it came out that very powerful people preyed on women, men, and even children. And of course, this horrible satanic abuse did not stop in Hollywood, as new lawsuits were put towards the former Speaker of the House in the United States for raping underage boys. In 2017, the world also found out that the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was also a serial sex attacker of young boys, which of course were usually covered up and there was no justice for, as the world found out that the police were complicit in these crimes and failed to go after pedophiles because of their power. And it was not only the police and the legal system that failed, but also the mainstream media that either ridiculed or ignored the victims sitting on important stories like the Harvey Weinstein story, allowing that person to commit sexual abuse for over 40 years. An inner Hollywood secret as predators colluded together and also just became more politically connected and empowered, evading the legal system, just like Jeffrey Epstein, which has even led people like Terry Crews, who was sexually assaulted before, fear for his own safety after exposing powerful Hollywood agents. And some of these people's arrogance is greatly highlighted by how they responded to even being accused. Just like Kevin Spacey coming out as gay, and even George Takei blaming Russia because of the sexual abuse allegations against him. And then, of course, this entire scandal became political as we saw the resignation of Al Franken and the end of Roy Moore's political career. But as we've been telling you throughout 2017, the sexual abuse by the elites still has not been fully uncovered. Even today, we found out how high-level Amazon and Google employees were busted for a major sex trafficking sting. And a lot of the elites are tied into some sick satanic occult ritual where they believe they get power from abusing young children. And it even came out this year that the elite are openly paying to ingest the blood of young people, using young blood transfusions for an anti-aging remedy. So yeah, there is still a lot more to uncover with this specific story, which we will be following very closely in 2018. And now the second story that I wanted to cover for 2017 is the fact that yes, the corporatocracy does exist, and it overwrites any form of governance. Interestingly enough, the number one post of Reddit this entire year is a photo of Emperor Palpatine with the tagline, "Upvote this," so that people see it when they Google the Senate. And overall, in 2017, I would say that a lot of American people were disenfranchised by their representatives, who were usually bought and sold to the highest bidder. Even Chimette Filipaitia, the former Facebook executive, came out and said that 150 men run the world pulling the strings of puppet politicians, while also saying that he regrets helping start Facebook since they are destroying the social fabric of society. And that could be epitomized by the actions of our government in 2017 that made very unpopular moves, like allowing internet companies to now get and sell your browsing history to advertisers. And then months later, government officials laughed at your comments, even going as far as using dead people's accounts to shill for their political cause, and against the will of the majority of people, ended net neutrality, while at the same time mega corporate giants like Amazon only empowered themselves with more government handouts and contracts, and recently making sure that tax reform mainly benefited them, all the while giving us products that are deliberately slowed down, continuing planned obsolescence. And crap, if that wasn't enough, they continued to expand their power against anyone standing in the way, as we found out this year that surveillance firms spied on specific campaign groups for major big companies, infiltrating protests with corporate spies to, of course, make sure that no one stands in their commercial activities. And if that wasn't enough, why not just suppress and censor any critical thinking outside of the official narratives out there, as we've seen social media companies like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and even Reddit engage in this year, suppressing freedom of speech for the benefit of the power monopolies. All this while the gap between the rich and the poor is becoming wider than ever, as robots, automation, and artificial intelligence are only set to empower them more in the next few years. So yeah, we have that situation on our hands. And now moving forward, the third story of 2017 that turned out to be true is, of course, how the United States aided and funded ISIS. A very important story that, of course, was labeled a conspiracy theory. But this year, in 2017, even the corporate media had to admit that the United States has armed ISIS, especially after a new investigation that came out this year that concluded that 97% of the weapons used by ISIS were supplied illegally by the United States and Saudi Arabia. Now, how did they find that out? Well, they were American weapons. And if that bombshell wasn't big enough, even this year, under the Donald Trump administration, we have found out that the United States brokered a deal with ISIS and allowed them and their families to escape the city of Raqqa. A story that we even told you about before the BBC even confirmed it. Also, earlier this year, we found out from leaked audio from the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, that the United States and Barack Obama himself wanted ISIS to grow. Now, this year, we even heard from the U.S. president himself on how he was cutting the program that armed Syrian rebels, but he never cut the Pentagon program, and according to many reports, the training of Syrian rebels is still continuing right now in Syria. This, alongside Donald Trump also launching military strikes against ISIS's enemy, the Syrian government, as well as colluding with Saudi Arabia and Israel to make Iran the major one threat in the region, we of course are learning that the foreign policy and objectives of the United States did not change just because simply the president did, which I hope the left and the right both wake up to, since, they're the cause of the whole war on terror and Western terrorism. So yeah, that's an important subject that we've been focusing on and will continue to focus on. And now number 4, UFOs exist. Well, according to the government, where the former head of a Pentagon alien program came out and said that UFO existence is, quote, proven beyond reasonable doubt. And strangely, the U.S. government released videos of a UFO and testimony from the naval pilot describing his UFO encounter as defying the laws of physics and something that is not of this world. Interestingly enough, even the Chilean government released UFO videos just earlier this year, which seems to corroborate the U.S. Navy's assessment, and of course leaving many saying that there's a lot more to this story, especially to why is the U.S. government releasing video of this now, which of course is leading to more speculation, more supposed UFO sightings that are really the SpaceX rocket launch that happened a few days ago on the West Coast. And I don't know what to believe. I'm just very skeptical of government, and very interestingly enough, the mainstream media is now saying that officially UFOs and aliens are probably real, while conspiracy theorists on the internet are calling it bullcrap. So yeah, that happened in 2017. And of course, last but not least is the fact that yes, the U.S. government is colluding with a foreign power that is not in its benefit. Now, of course, in 2017, we've been hearing all about the Trump Russia-Putin collusion story that has been going around in circles, that the mainstream media has been obsessing about, and ultimately hasn't led to anything concrete. But through Robert Mueller's Russian probe of Donald Trump, we did find out that the United States is, in fact, colluding with Israel, especially Donald Trump's transition team which had Jared Kushner on, his son-in-law, who under the orders of Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, told Michael Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, to call all the countries in the United Nations Security Council to delay a UN vote on a resolution that was critical of Israel's settlement policy. We also found out that Jared Kushner donated to pro-Israeli causes before pushing for this UN vote, and he even failed to disclose how he led a foundation funding illegal settlements in Israel, ultimately showing us how the Trump administration colluded with and advanced the interests of Israel behind the scenes, not Russia. But yet again, this story was mainly ignored by the U.S. mainstream media, which is especially concerning since the United States with Saudi Arabia and Israel are working hand in hand with the same geopolitical interests that, of course, do not serve the United States, which, of course, is leading us to a path of more war and pushing us from the rest of the world, like we seen when Donald Trump announced that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel and that he is moving the U.S. embassy there. A move that pushed away many of the United States allies and obviously has no clear benefit to the United States, showing the rest of the world that, yes, there actually is some collusion here that needs to be addressed. So yeah, those are the top 5 bombshell conspiracy theories that have been proved in 2017. If you believe I missed a story, please let me know in the comment section below. So yeah, 2017 has been a turbulent year, even speaking for myself personally, but as an optimist, I believe it can only get better from here. And I think it will, especially with people educating themselves and not depending on someone else to tell them what's really happening in this world. Again, all the sources for all the articles will be listed in our Steemit post, which I will post on my Twitter account, twitter.com/LukeWeAreChange. And of course, I am eternally grateful for all the people that allowed this year to happen through your donations on wearechange.org/donate. And ultimately, because of this system, you, the viewer, you're the boss of this operation. And it wouldn't continue without your viewership, help, and support. And that's why I just wanted to say thank you. And that's why I always end my broadcasts by saying, I love you. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.
We Are Change, wearechange.org, and We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, we already know most conspiracy theories that, sound reasonable tend to turn out to be pretty reasonable. There are those occasions where, reality is stranger than fiction, and those are the ones that are the big surprise. What wasn't a big surprise is, they're all going after, Trump and Russia. I bet you it's Hillary that's dealing with Russia. Yeah, that might be a conspiracy theory that might turn out to be pretty true. We'll see if anything happens. I think there should be a special prosecutor put in to investigate Uranium One and all that. But again, we'll see what happens. What actually, needs to happen, what does happen, tend to be different things. But again, we'll see. I'm just hoping that our country stabilizes, because we really need it. If we can't get our country to stabilize, you're going to have people stop trying. Well, fortunately, the economy got better. Problem. Stay tuned here. Bye.